Hello, and thank you for joining us on The World Today. I'm Anne Nwawado. Here's what's coming up on the program. Former U.S. President Donald Trump expected to be formally charged in court today for plotting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The U.S. announces partial evacuation of embassy staff from Niger Republic as a military junta declares it will not bow to pressure to reinstate the post-president Mohamed Bazoum. Plus, rescuers evacuate residents in loaders and boats from flooded cities in northern Hebei. Once again, welcome to the program. Well, all is now set for former U.S. President Donald Trump appearing in court today to on charges of plotting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Mr. Trump himself has slammed the case as proof of the corruption scandal and the failure of the U.S. under current President Joe Biden. Mr. Trump already faces 2 other criminal cases as he campaigns to enter the White House next year. So let's take a look at the preparations this morning in the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C. Metal barriers are up outside the federal courthouse where the former president will be listening to the charges being formally read to him. Similar structures have also been set up around the U.S. Capitol buildings where Mr. Trump's supporters rioted back in January 2021, many of them very angry at the result of the election. The Secret Service is already on ground. Their job usually is to provide protection to residents and former presidents. They released a statement warning the public of what they call short-term traffic implications in central Washington, D.C. They even attended to a hoax 911 call on Wednesday about an active shooting at the Capitol. This triggered a lockdown in 3 Senate office buildings and a major office emergency response by police. Protection for judges has also reportedly been increased, but Mr. Trump himself is expected to arrive in the court at 8 p.m. GMT. And there have also been lots of reactions to the news. The former president will be appearing in court today. But according to a former federal prosecutor, whether the case will go to trial remains to be seen. But Mr. Trump is most likely to face a jury. Well, if the case does go to trial, then Mr. Trump will have to balance his campaign stops with various court appearances related to all 3 indictments. His New York State criminal trial involving a hush money payment to a porn star is due to begin in March next year, and his Florida trial in the federal classified documents case will begin on May the 20th, 2024.
I keep trying to think of a word to describe this era in which we're living, and I keep coming up with bonkers, right? Like, this is just so wild, the fact that we're in this position. I mean, it's so wild that, in fact, the 3rd criminal indictment is just sort of one more, right? Like, I saw the news hit yesterday. There's another indictment. Okay, here's another one. So the arraignment itself is just a pretty perfunctory experience. So, and frankly, the former president has done this a few times already now. So he knows how this is going to go. But he's going to be processed. He's going to be advised of the charges against him. He's going to enter a plea of not guilty. The judge may set out a very initial schedule, but this is the magistrate judge, not the district court judge, is going to be handling the matter. So their job in this type of case in a criminal proceeding at this point is just to sort of be the initial gatekeeper for the matter and advise the defendant of the charges against them. The former president is very litigious. I mean, it's hard to see him resolving this in some way prior to trial, unless he is sort of willing to resolve the other case, the documents case, and then, in turn, as a result of that, sort of these charges aren't continued. I mean, but it's hard to imagine a resolution that the former president would agree to. Most federal cases resolve before trial, a vast majority of them. It's a very small percentage that go to trial. But given what's at stake here, who the defendant is here, These cases certainly seem to be heading towards trial.
Former Vice President during Mr. Trump's term, Mike Pence, on Wednesday told reporters that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. Back when controversy over the elections were rife, Mr. Trump had pushed Mr. Pence to refuse to certify the results based on his accusations of voter fraud on multiple occasions. But Mr. Pence refused. He told a crowd of supporters in Indianapolis that he had hoped that things would not have come to this.
Irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution. But I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I mean, I really do believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States again. Now, with regard to the substance of the indictment, I've been very clear. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. I had hoped that this issue and the judgment of the President's actions that day would be left to the American people. Well, I testified under a subpoena before the grand jury. I'm somebody that believes in the rule of law, but look, I have nothing to hide. And so my focus is going to be not on the indictment or the merits of it. There are profound issues. The President can make his case in court. But I'm going to make it clear to the American people, as I seek the Republican nomination, that despite what Donald Trump has said over the last 2.5 years, that I had no right to overturn the election.
And staying in America, but to other matters now between the United States and North Korea, the country today confirmed it is holding in custody a U.S. soldier, Travis King, who dashed across the border to the North Korean side from South Korea on July the 18th this year. As the U.S. and North Korea do not have diplomatic relations, the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang has now called to talk about negotiations and is already doing that on behalf of the United States. The UN, which informed on North Korea's acknowledgement of Travis, said that it will give more details about Pyongyang's response very soon. But Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said the North Korea only acknowledged the UN command's request for information about Army Private King and then stopped short of offering detailed information about him. Before he crossed the border, King served 2 months in detention in South Korea for assault charges. He was then released on July the 10th. He was supposed to fly back to the U.S. to face the disciplinary proceedings, but he managed to leave the airport and join the DMZ tour. Let's check in briefly with Israel, as the Supreme Court today began hearing the first in a series of appeals against the judicial overhaul being unfurled by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his religious nationalist coalition, which has set off an unprecedented domestic crisis. A March amendment to the quasi-constitutional Basic Law limited conditions under which a prime minister can be deemed unfit or incapacitated and removed from office. The appellants, backed by Netanyahu's own Attorney General, want that voided. The case being heard by 3 justices pits the Supreme Court against the Knesset, or the parliament, situated shouting distance away across a rose garden on a gentle Jerusalem hill. Critics are saying the judicial overhaul plan seeks to change the basic nature of Israel's democracy. But supporters of Mr. Netanyahu, who is on trial in 3 graft cases, claim that the Supreme Court hold unproportional powers over the government and the parliament's decision.
We need that the government will stop dealing with the Knesset, with the legislation, like a game. Like doing every time that the rules are not okay for them, they're going to change the rules.
I'm a lawyer in Israel, and I've come here to protest against the Supreme Court, because today our vote doesn't matter anymore, because 15 judges decide for us all the matters of life, and it's not democracy. We want a true and real democracy, that the people vote and they have meaning of their decisions and they can create their own life by themselves. And today we cannot do this, and we are here to say stop.
I've been protesting for 30 weeks. I'm exhausted, but I had to come today, and I will go Saturday night. I don't want to be desperate. I don't want to be drawn into despair. I want to be active and help protect my country. I'm a patriot. I served in the army, as did my children, as did my husband. I have a little grandchild. I want this country to flourish as a democracy for his sake.
Well, let's head back to the United States, where Mr. Trump is facing the court today, and there are already 3 charges we told you about. But let's hear more from our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird, who joins us now. Hello, Maria.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evenings, good to see you. Let's begin with Washington, D.C. It must be on top alert today. We have seen different videos coming in from there, barriers all over. It is anticipating the arrival of former U.S. presidents. I know there are, police security personnel swarming the place already, but what about the Trump supporters? Have they begun to gather near the courthouse? Do they have plans to be there today?
Yes, we can expect that we will see Trump supporters at the courthouse today. They're expected to do the arraignment at 4 p.m. this afternoon, so we can expect that we will definitely see his supporters gathering in that area. Now, there is a subway station right there, which is public transportation, which we can expect because that area, as you mentioned, is blocked off by police and other street closures, so people will have to take public transportation to get to the courthouse.
But how serious are these charges the former president will be hearing today? I know he faces charges on trying to overturn the 2020 election. Is there a breakdown of his efforts during that time? And what could have happened had he succeeded?
This is, I think we've seen him indicted previously. We know that there is potentially another indictment that will come against the former president. But this is one that I think Congress has been waiting for. Congress spent a lot of time during the January 6th hearings trying to find out and to prove if there is going to be any type of evidence that was needed for the indictment that the former president was involved in the attack on the Capitol. And furthermore, his attempts to what they are considering defrauding the election and overturning the election, which is obviously illegal. So those charges that you're seeing brought forth that will be announced today at 4 p.m. when he is arraigned are ones that are new, and I think this is very different than what we've seen in the past. We've never seen these type of charges brought before a former president, and we know that there has been a lot of work done and research done to be able to tie him to this overturning and this actual attack on the Capitol. Now, what would have happened if he had been successful in that? I think the U.S. democracy would have definitely been in a major challenging position because that would have gone against the democratic rules and the democratic way that the U.S. has for so long touted itself to being the model of democracy.
Now, which high-profile individual does the former U.S. president have on his side? Even we have seen Vice President Mike Pence has already abandoned him. Which of these high-profile individuals does he have, if he has any, on his side?
Well, we know that there are many Republicans who have followed along with the former president. You look at Marjorie Greene, the congresswoman, has been a strong Trump supporter. We know that there are many others who have what many have called the MAGA Republicans, almost creating a separate sector of the Republican Party that are strong supporters of the former president. At this time, he is still leading in the polls. If you look at who is the likely candidate for the Republican Party, he still has a very strong base despite these indictments. And what many are predicting that potentially he could be the nominee, even if he is charged and if these things do become true and that the court of law finds him guilty of these indictments. So we are in a very interesting position as a country in the United States because you're seeing so many indictments against him, and especially, as you mentioned, the defrauding of the election being the current indictment, but still having a strong following by his supporters.
But some analysts have said that it could take years for Mr. Trump to go to trial. Now, if he does go to trial, he will be the first U.S. president to do so. How damaging could this be for Mr. Trump's reputation and, of course, for the Republican Party and the United States in general?
I think it's going to be more damaging. I think many people would say, if you look at what the analysts have been discussing, more damaging to the U.S.'s democracy, more so than even the former president. The former president, the rest of the world has kind of created their opinion of him during his presidency. And I don't know if that is much different than what we're seeing today. And those supporters behind him, they believe that this is about the American people, not necessarily about President Trump, and that this is an injustice against the American people. And that is what he has for so long been telling supporters that this is about. This isn't about him. This is about the American people. So his supporters are going to continue to support him despite, and so his reputation will continue. But this will definitely, as you mentioned, have an impact if he was to be able to gain the nomination for the Republican Party. It will have a challenge on the U.S. As a whole, especially as we are viewed globally.
One of the charges against the former president is in relation to the clarified document or classified document actually found in his Mar-a-Lago home. Classified documents were also found in President Biden's home. Why is he facing these charges, and why is President Biden not facing the similar charges?
Well, there's an investigation for the current president as it relates to those, and obviously the classified documents for the former president were found much earlier, and so they're at a position now where they can bring charges against him. What will happen as a result of the current president with those classified documents? Well, you know, the special counsel will have to provide details as to what they actually find. So I just think we're not as far along in the process to know whether or not it is a differential in treatment.
And finally, Maria, Mr. Trump has, of course, several cases, as we know, and he has slammed the case as proof of corruption, scandal, failure of the U.S. under Joe Biden's presidency. How is this being received by the American people?
The American people, I think, aren't surprised. The American people are definitely understanding that this is where we are as a country, unfortunately. And I think that the American people are hopeful that the current president will be able to continue to move the country forward, as there are so many areas that need attention that are beyond what we're seeing here. But I think Americans are going to pay special attention to these indictments because we are talking about what was potentially looked at as a defrauding and an overturning attempt of the democracy in the U.S.
Thank you very much, Maria Bird, our Washington correspondent. Thanks a lot for your contribution on The World Today.
Have a great day.
Welcome back to the program. The U.S. has ordered non-essential staff in its embassy in Niger Republic to leave immediately as more evacuations take place for foreigners stuck in the country following the coup last week. Coup leader General Abdurrahman Tiani has warned against what he says is any interference in the internal affairs of the country. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke to ousted President Mohamed Bazoum on Wednesday. The U.S. is a major donor of humanitarian and security aid to Niger and has previously warned that the coup could lead to the suspension of all cooperation. Niger, where both France and the U.S. maintain military bases, has been a key Western ally in the fight against jihadist extremism in the Sahel region. More on those U.S. evacuations from Niger. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has said the U.S. Embassy in Niamey remains open and they intend for it to remain open. He says America remains committed to the people of Niger and its relationship with the people despite the coup.
The U.S. Embassy in Niamey is open. We intend for it to remain open. We remain committed to the people of Niger and our relationship with the people of Niger, and we remain diplomatically engaged at the highest levels. That's something that will continue. I will also say that the safety and security of our personnel and of U.S. citizens overseas is our highest priority. We constantly monitor events on the ground and make decisions based on what's appropriate to safeguard our personnel. We're monitoring the situation on the ground and making the decisions we need to ensure their security now, but I don't have any further announcements at this time. I would say generally the situation in Niamey remains calm. It is a fluid situation. We continue to monitor it, and we will make whatever decisions are appropriate regarding the safety of our personnel in the embassy as well as U.S. citizens on the ground.
One of the first countries to begin evacuating citizens from Niger is France. Some of them arrived on Wednesday night in Paris, as more evacuations are also expected to come in the coming days. The plane that landed was the third that carried French and European nationals out of the African nation, causing other countries to do the same, or at least make preparations to do the same. According to the French Foreign Ministry, the first 2 French flights left Niger on Tuesday, August the 1st, and landed in Paris early on Wednesday with more than 350 French people on board, as well as citizens of a number of other nations. France, which is a former colonial power in Niger Republic, has asked the military junta to guarantee the security of their embassy. Crowds had attacked the French diplomatic mission on Sunday, prompting the country to organize evacuation flights. More than 1,000 French citizens and other Europeans have now been flown out of the country. In the meantime, the Nigerian Defense Headquarters is saying the armed forces is yet to receive an order for any military intervention in Niger following the coup that led to President Mohamed Bazoum's ouster. Director Defense Information, Brigadier General Tukur Gusau, in a statement, dismissed the reports, which already said the Nigerian military was assembling its forces for military action of the Republic of Niger. He says the army is yet to receive any order from the appropriate authority. The statement reads in part, in reaction to this illegal takeover of government, the ECOWAS heads of government met and a series of options were reached on how to intervene in the crisis. Military option was the last option to be taken in case of every other option failing to reverse the situation and return the government to Republic of Niger to constitutional order. At the moment, ECOWAS Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff is currently holding an extraordinary meeting in Abuja to discuss the political situation in the Republic of Niger and submit their plans to the Committee of Heads of States and Government of ECOWAS for consideration. In conclusion, it says the armed forces of Nigeria cannot proceed on any operation in any of the member states of ECOWAS without a mandate from the authority of heads of state and government. Again, the Nigerian Defense Headquarters has said the armed forces is yet to receive any order for any military intervention in Niger. Meanwhile, leader of last week's coup in Niger, General Tchiani, has condemned sanctions imposed on the country by regional bloc ECOWAS as illegal, unjust, and inhuman. He insists that his government will not give in to regional or international pressure to reinstate Niger's elected president Mohamed Bazoum. In a televised speech, he insisted that French nationals had nothing to fear, even as the country began evacuating citizens. In the meantime, an ECOWAS delegation led by Nigeria's former military head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, is in the Nigerian capital, Niamey, to mediate with the coup leaders. Joining me now is Senior Research Fellow, Institute of African Studies, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Dr. Mwako Nwazigue. Thank you very much, Dr. Nwazigue, for joining us on The World today.
Thank you very much for making me your guest today.
Thank you. Europeans in Niger are already leaving by the droves out of that place because, of course, they fear the backlash from the military junta, even though he has already said France has nothing to fear, or the French people have nothing to fear. While this is expected, what do you think these European powers make of the coup? Though some of them, like France, has already said that they only recognize Mohamed Bazoum as Niger's president.
Thank you very much. First is the normal process of citizen protection for those advanced countries to evacuate their vulnerable citizens out of any chaotic situation or any state of apprehension for possible or fear of a possible backlash from such crisis. So it's not new. They did it in Sudan, they did it in Tunisia, they did it in Afghanistan, even before the main crisis. So the evacuation of their citizens is just a normal administrative process. But coming to issue of recognition, I think France is not, or let me say, France is not in position to determine who rules a particular country. It is the people that determines the recognition. If the people say, look, you are our president, you are our head of state, it stands. It's not for the outsider, whether United States of America, whether Nigeria, to come and tell the people who they will recognize and who they will not recognize. And let us have it in mind that the same France supported the social coup in the neighboring Chad. When Idriss Deby died, and then the president of the National Assembly constitutionally was supposed to take power. That's what the Constitution of Chad, Chad Republic said. But the same France, including Nigeria, supported the seizure of power by Idris' son. Was that not a coup? They supported him. So it's like where the problem, where the interest suits them, they support. Where they feel that the person coming in will not defend their interest, they will tell us they don't support. So it does not make any difference to the people. So long as the people on ground say, look, we are in support of your action. And moreover, it actually takes place. One of the reasons the coup plotters, stated was the issue of insecurity. France has about 1,500 troops there. America has about 1,100. Italy has 300. European Union, about 100. Canada has military technical advisors in the same country. And their purpose of being there is to counter insurgency, to counter insecurity in the country. Yet insecurity persists. So if they are there to counter insecurity, and insecurity continues to increase geometric terms, in geometric terms, then what's the point of having them there? So it does not make any sense. If France, tells us, oh, they are not recognizing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I think that's the point.
All right.
Yes.
We're already counting down to the end of ECOWAS' ultimatum to the junta to reinstate Mr. Bazoum, and there is no change even as we speak. There has only been a resolve to keep countries out of Niger's domestic matters, and it seems that people are behind the coup plotters. What do you think will happen when this ultimatum expires?
There is nothing will happen, because the Constitution Charter of ECOWAS did not give room for military intervention in any member state. It's not there. There's no provision for military intervention. If you look at the charter, the protocols, in fact, if you look at the ECOWAS protocol, 2001 protocol, that the Chief of Army Staff even quoted, it says, in the event of a coup or insecurity in any country, change of that is in case democracy is threatened in any state, like Planku, the only provision the ECOWAS made is impose the kind of sanction they will they will impose on that particular state. So it is a question of imposing sanction, not engaging in military action to impose who will rule the people. And if you look at it, the people are behind the coup plotters for the reason that the has region. And all the 7 regions, except the is plagued with insecurity. It's wrong.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nwazigue. He's the fellow, senior research fellow, Institute of African Study, University of Nigeria and Nsukka, Dr. Mwako Nwazigue. Thank you very much for your contribution on the world today. Let's move to other stories now, where Bongo Musa Manana, a 19-year-old deaf student who studies in a township south of Johannesburg in South Africa, sees South Africa's move to recognize sign as an official language as a huge breakthrough that will help him get to the university and even make his dreams come true. President Cyril Ramaphosa signed legislation into law last month, recognizing sign as the country's 12th official language. Alongside English is the Zulu, Afrikaans, and others to help protect the rights of the deaf and promote inclusivity. Still, South Africa only has about 40 deaf schools and 1 tertiary institution that is fully accessible to deaf people, meaning that there is still work to be done to improve that access.
Bongo Musa Manana, a 19-year-old student with hearing impairment who studies in a township south of Johannesburg, sees South Africa's move to recognize sign as an official language as a huge breakthrough that will help him get to university and make his dreams come true.
Previously, the challenge was that when you go to police stations or inside a taxi, it's very difficult to communicate with people because I'm deaf, so I use signs, and people don't understand how to communicate with me. So now it was very, very hard to communicate at first. So now with the new bill that's been passed, I think that access is going to be much, much easier because now people will, it's going to be people at the police station, they need to have an interpreter for me, especially. So if I get to inside a taxi, people need to know that I am deaf. Whereas before it was an official language, it was really hard. There was absolutely no access. So my hopes for next year, I really want to go to university because previously, when it wasn't an official language, I really didn't think that I would be able to go to university. I used to have a lot of doubts. So now that it's an official language, I know that I can go to university and I can make my dreams come true. I can achieve anything.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa signed the legislation into law last month, recognizing sign as the country's 12th official language, alongside English, isiZulu, Afrikaans, and others, to help protect the rights of the hearing impaired and promote inclusivity.
All official languages must enjoy parity, in other words, equality of esteem, and must be treated equitably.
Boss, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that beautiful presentation.
Making sign language official. As you have heard, we will be joining 3 other countries on our continent who have preceded us, and we're very proud to join that group of countries that have advanced to the level of recognizing sign language as an official language. And we aim to advance the rights of people who communicate through sign language and to ensure that their dignity, their regard is uplifted in our society.
Still, South Africa only has about 40 deaf schools and one tertiary institution that is fully accessible to deaf people, meaning there is still work to be done to improve that access.
It is a very rich, beautiful language, but we need people who are going to be equipped enough to develop it even more so that at any university, we only have one college in South Africa that is fully accessible in sign language, a deaf college in Cape Town. In the whole country, we have 46 deaf schools, which is a shame. And we have just over 4 million deaf people. I mean, make the maths.
According to World Atlas, an online site that studies demographics, only 41 countries recognize sign language as an official language. Just 4 of them in Africa: Kenya, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. It has been a long journey for South Africa to get this far, and deaf students have been waiting for those barriers to be removed. Now that it's an official language, 19-year-old Manana's dreams will come true.
Welcome back. Let's start with weather conditions. Heavy rainfall over the past several days has caused a flash flood in a mudslide in Thailand's northern Mae Hong Son province, sweeping away 12 houses and killing 1 person in Submoy district. The president of the Mae Sam Lab sub-district office says that about 100 villagers have been evacuated as a mudslide had damaged roads and even cut off highways. Officials were seen in the affected areas, sealing off fallen trees, branches, and inspected roads damages. Meanwhile, state media observed the Chi River in northwest eastern province is leveling, although it is still below the riverbank. The water level from the Moon River in northeastern Obo-Ratsachini province still reportedly at normal level, where water is being released at a steady level. But reports by several local media has it that there has been heavy rainfall in Thailand's north during the days recorded. Meanwhile, rescuers evacuated residents in loaders and boats from flooded cities in China's northern Hebei. Footage carried by CCTV showed residents jumping onto rescue boats amidst historical flooding in Hebei's Zhuzhou city, where many residents are still trapped in their homes by floodwater. Floodwaters could take up to a month to recede in the region, where it is the hardest hit city. The Water Resources Department official told state media on Thursday that more than 1.2 million people in the Hebei region had been taken to safety. The volume of rain that fell in the province exceeded the storage capacity of its large and medium-sized reservoirs by more than 2-fold. And in northern Taiwan, businesses have been shut, schools and airlines have been cancelled, dozens of flights as the moving Typhoon Kanun skirted past the island's northeast and warnings of flood and high winds. Typhoon Kahun, also categorized by Taiwan's Weather Bureau as the second strongest typhoon level, slowly headed towards its northeastern coast with the maximum winds of about 98 kilometers per hour as of 9:15 a.m. local time. The eye of the typhoon was about 360 kilometers off Taipei in the east of China, heading to the westerly direction of around 5 kilometers per hour. The northern cities, including the capital, Taipei, shut businesses and schools and rescued subway services, while hundreds of soldiers were put on standby for disaster response. But Taiwan's stock of foreign exchange markets were also closed, and hundreds of soldiers were on standby in nearby cities for disaster response. The storm hit power lines in Japan's popular tourist destinations earlier this week, knocking out electricity by more than 200,000 households and killing 1 person. Followers of Pope Francis today celebrated as the leader of the Catholic Church held an event for students. Pope Francis is celebrating World Youth Day in the country today. But earlier he spoke about higher education, saying a university would have little use if it were simply to train the next generation to perpetuate the present global system of elitism and inequality, in which higher education is the privilege of a few. Unless knowledge is embraced as a responsibility, it is still of little use. If someone who has benefited from a higher education, which nowadays in Portugal, as in the wider world, remains a privilege, it makes no effort to give something in return, they have not fully appreciated what they have been offered. Catholics from around the world also traveled to mark the day at Lisbon's Catholic University.
Every World Youth Day has been different, very exciting. Of course, my first ones were John Paul II, which were incredible. And I went to the first one in 1986. 1986 in Rome. That was fabulous. So I always try to help bring girls because it made such an impact on my life. Again, I think one thing that was really important that I felt very supported as a youth, because many times we're in places where we feel kind of alone, living our faith, that we don't have a lot of friends living the same, maybe the intensity that we would like them to live it. So I think it's very encouraging.
And finally, almost 100 cooks worked together to prepare what they hope will be the longest torta sandwich during the 18th annual Torta Fair in Mexico City. The sandwich filled with different kinds of meats, vegetables, and cheese measured 75 meters. That's about 246 feet. Just last year, participants of the Torta Fair established a record by preparing a 74-meter-long sandwich. During the fair, attendees could taste a piece of the enormous snack or instead try to gastronomic offer of the more than 70 Mexicans and international sandwich stores around. Different from the traditional sandwich, the traditional Mexican torta is bigger in size. It can be made of a variety of products. And on that delicious note, we end the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwazigue. Good evening.